So this was my first 30 days running a marketing agency, SMMA, and the most embarrassing part, I had no experience in marketing. No team, no connections, just me, a beaten old MacBook, and absolutely no clue how I was going to start making money from this. 30 days later, I didn't sign just one client. I signed a bunch of clients and made over $5,000. And this is exactly how I did it. No fluff, step by step. Copy me if you want, stick around because I'm not going to gatekeep anything. But before I show you exactly how, some context, before I started, I was a biomedical science graduate. That's where I studied at university, and I ended up working at a hospital for a while until I ended up leaving because an opportunity came up to work with Iman Gaji as a sales coach at his company Educate. So what I would basically do is coach students on sales and things like that. I had quite a bit of sales experience. I've done door-to-door sales in the past. I've worked on sales floors for some pretty big companies. And so the thing that I learned whilst I was there though is that every single day I would see students crushing it, and my own students would be making sales and silly money, way more than I was making at the time, through their agencies and their businesses, 10K months, 20K months. And some of these people were just, for lack of a better word, unqualified, right? And I used to look at them, I was just like, how did you manage to pull that off? I worked there for a while, I ended up moving away from it eventually because I was like, you know what? Let me give this business shit a try myself. Let me give it a proper crack and see how I go. And this was my first business, my first proper business ever. And most people think that, the first month of SMMA is all about luck. And honestly, it's not. I genuinely think it's about learning how to basically get punched over and over and then just keep moving forward. Here is my stats for my first 30 days in the business. This is what I made. Over $5,000 in revenue. I ended up refunding one client because he basically, you can see here, $797, November the 6th. $797 he paid us up front. I ended up refunding him because, for context, I was in the real estate niche. We're at the end of the year. People aren't buying homes in December. We're coming up to the Christmas holidays. People aren't putting money into homes, right? So he said to me that, hey, can we pause this until January and then we can restart this then? So I gave him a refund for the time being, but he did actually end up coming back as a client. So I count it as a win. So I'm counting it in as the actual money I made here. But you can see here, one day later, November the 7th, I ended up making $10.97, $11.97 in total because he paid a $100 deposit. And then 2 days later, I signed another client for $12.97. And so within the space of a week from signing no clients, I thought this was going to take ages. I thought I'm going to spend at least a couple of months not making any money from this. Within a couple of weeks, I was starting to actually see some good results and start making some good money. Here's the strategy and exactly how I did it. Now, I believe that I was able to get this much momentum in my first 30 days of running this business because of three main things. And I even made a list for you guys because, like I told you, we ain't gatekeeping around here. So the first one being my offer. I had a ridiculous no-brainer offer. Basically, it was like this: 30 appointments in 90 days, or you don't pay and you get a full refund. I will guarantee you will get 30 real estate appointments for your business in those 90 days. In real estate, for context, that's ridiculous because only one of these deals has to close out of 30 appointments. The agent themselves will make about 7 to 15 grand if they just close one of those deals. Makes sense. Any agent would jump on that offer. To break that down, all I was doing for them in terms of service was I was basically running meta ads, so Facebook, Instagram, for these real estate agents, brokers, and then I was manually calling every single one of these leads myself to try and book them in for an appointment. So every single day, on top of doing my own outreach in cold calls, I'll break that down in a sec, but on top of my own outreach. And so the second thing that genuinely got me to that first month of making $5 grand a month. For context, my first wage from the hospital was like £800 after tax. I got it lying around somewhere. But the second thing and the second reason why I was able to get to that point in the first 30 days of my business was because of my outreach system. Here's what actually made me the money. This is how I did it. I started off with a LinkedIn DM outreach. So I was literally DMing business owners every day, and I was maxing out as many of those messages I could send on my LinkedIn account, making connections as many as I could, and I was getting appointments from LinkedIn. And don't get me wrong, I was getting a fair few, but the problem was I was getting so many appointments. I had about 30 sales calls from all of those appointments that I booked in, and not a single one of them closed. Not a single one ended up paying me, and this was in the space of like 2 weeks. Everybody was saying that's too expensive for me. I can't really afford that for my business right now. That I don't have a marketing budget like that. I was so demotivated after it because at this point I was turning around to my brother and I literally said to him, I was like, bro, should I start applying for jobs again? Because if this is what it's going to be like, this is going to take a long time and I don't think we're going to be able to get there. I ended up asking ChatGPT and it basically told me that the people that you're getting and the objection that you're getting of it's too expensive is because the people you're speaking to don't make enough money. So I decided for my own business, I'm going to hyper target and hyper focus on already successful business owners because they already got money. And if I only hunt for big fish, I'm only going to end up catching those whales. So I started cold calling since I had a decent amount of experience in that field. And I just went for crazy volume. You don't have to be talented and you don't have to be that good when you do enough volume and supplement it. Volume negates luck every single time. So I'm talking, I was doing around 250 to 300 dials every single day without fail. Remember, I was going full time with this. So 250 to 300 dials every single day. So I've got a calculator in front of me. I'm going to break it down because numbers don't lie. Watch how achievable it can be if you just follow the blueprint. Let's say you only did 200 dials per day. All right. Let's say you did 200 dials, less than I was doing when I started. And let's say you had a conversion rate to appointment of 2%. Which is not that amazing. That's average for new beginners in the space, right? Let's say you got a 2% conversion rate from lead to appointment booked so that you can pitch these people on your services. That would be 200 times, that would be 4 appointments, right? So it would be 4 appointments you would get every single day. Let's break this down. Let's say you got those 4 and you did this for 5 days a week, not even 6 like I was doing. I'm giving you an extra day off. Let's just say you did it for 5. You would get 20 appointments booked in your calendar, right? Out of those 20 now, you've got 20 sales calls stacked up. Let's assume even further, I'm going to give you the worst odds possible. Let's say only half of them showed up to the meeting, right? So that would be 10 people out of 20 that actually show up to the call with you. Out of those 10, let's say that your conversion rate now of people you actually managed to sell out of this was only 10%. You would close 1 client, right? So 10% of 10 would just be 1 client closed. So by the end of the week, you would have closed 1 client out of those 20 appointments that you booked. 1 client, if you charge a minimum of $1,000, numbers don't lie, $1,000 is what you would make that week. Do that for 4 weeks now, and you've just made $4,000 in your first month of business, which matches up with basically the numbers that I was getting in the business at the beginning of $5,000 made in my first 30 days. That's the blueprint. That's how you do it. And based on the numbers, they match up with what I was showing you, my Stripe earnings. And I'm not special at the end of the day. And the calculator doesn't make mistakes. You just follow the blueprint, make sure you're putting in those dials, putting in the work on the outreach side, and it becomes inevitable. And all I was doing to basically find these numbers was going on directories like realtor.com, finding real estate agents that were in the area, and then all I was doing was calling the most successful ones out of these guys. So you can see here, Janice, for example, I remember giving her a call. Some of these names I recognize, Curtin team, etc. I would look at their numbers. So, okay, for example, with Janice, she's made 268 calls in the last 12 months, right? This is public information. It's all online. You can literally just go to this website here and then start giving her a call. So click on her name. All I would do, go to her, find her contact details on the page. Should be here somewhere. There you go. Mobile number, give her a call, pitch her, try and get her to a meeting. And that was it. And then all I was doing was coming back, putting all of these numbers into a spreadsheet, right? So thousands and thousands of people for me to call here in a spreadsheet. And then I was just ringing them. And the most successful ones, like I said, based on how much they were selling, call them and then start booking them in for an appointment. So you can see here, literally 1, 2, 3, 4 calls in, I booked an appointment. 1, 2, 3, 4 calls later, booked another appointment. Actually, these are different dates, but you get the point, right? Booked call after book call after book call. Yeah, there's many no answers. People hang up on you. People are going to say no, etc. It doesn't matter. We're going for volume here. And that was it. And that's literally how I ended up signing my first client. My first client that actually signed will have been here somewhere. Don't want to expose names, but one of these was my first client that I managed to close here. This one actually, 99 sold, 20th of thingy. And then we had to reschedule the call a few times, but by November the 7th is I think when this guy closed. So 20th of October is when I booked him for the first appointment. Point is, guys, you don't have to be fancy. Spreadsheet, dialer, make calls, do lots of volume, get some appointments in, close those deals. Let me break it down for you. Fast forward, and my calendar was starting to fill up now with appointments from cold calls. And these people were already successful agents. I was only calling the most successful agents in the area and then trying to get them on appointments because I knew, like I said, they already had money, which means they might be able to afford my services, or they can afford my services. So calendar was filling up, as you can probably see here. I'll put it above. I eventually closed my first client, and I remember it clear as day. It was November the 5th, 2023, bonfire night here in the UK. Fireworks were going off like crazy. I was sat here taking sales calls, and they ended up paying me $800, so $797 up front for the service. And whilst everything was going off outside, fireworks going off, smoke everywhere, I just remember walking into my brother's room and I was like, bro, we did it. I'd never been so excited to make $800 in my entire life. Like that, for context, by the way, that's about 700 quid, 680 quid, somewhere around there. And I'll put a link below this video to the first client that I closed and the cold call that I made to them. It lasted about 7 minutes. I'm going to put it below so you can hear how shit that call was, because genuinely, I'm not that talented, and you don't have to be super talented to make this work. I just know how to work hard consistently. So I'll show you that call. Feel free to click that link below and have a listen over it and model your own calls off that as well. The third thing that really helped me in the beginning of my business and the way that I actually did this was my sales process. So I've already shown you where I was finding these leads, how to call them, and basically reaching out on what I was kind of saying to them and the offer I had in place. Now, when you get them to the meeting, you need an effective sales system. So good reminders in place to make sure that they come, send them email reminders to come to the meeting, send them a text reminder, etc., right? And send them multiple of each, maybe even a VSL email if you have one in place. But what I was doing was I was doing a 2-call close in the beginning. So I wasn't trying to close them in one sitting. I wasn't just getting them on a meeting for 40 minutes and be like, okay, yeah, buy my product. It's going to be $1,200. You know, I'm going to do. I had no knowledge of the industry. I'm new to it. I also don't have any proof at the time or testimonials when in the start of my business. I had nothing to show them. So I decided to split it up along a 2-call close. So 15 minutes of discovery and then about 30 to 45 minutes on the demo. And basically what that does is, to break it down very simply, discovery call is where the sale is made, right? That's a fact, because what you can do in discovery, that's where you find out and ask them questions. Are they a good fit for you and your business? What kind of problems are they having with their business? How can you help them? What kind of specific things can you provide them with that they're currently struggling with, etc., etc. And it gets them into an emotional state, which is exactly where you want them to make the sale. Because when they start talking about their emotions of, I've been struggling with my business for the last 6 months, X, Y, Z, sales are, I would argue that about 70% of the sales, even in B2B, is made based off emotions. And so you want to get them into that emotional state essentially and then push the sale from there. And then the demo, which is the next meeting, 30 to 45 minutes, you just show them exactly how you're going to help them, what you're going to do, your process, how it works, the guarantee, all that good stuff, and then close them. Remember, the longer the runway, the bigger the ask. So the longer these sales cycles go on, the more amount of money you can ask them further down the line. And it kind of helps you. It takes the pressure off you, because that first conversation, you know you're not going to need to ask them or pitch them for any sort of money at the end of the call. So you can kind of start off the call by jokingly saying, John, this isn't a sales call. I just want to find out X, Y, Z, right? So that was it. A good sales process. Please spend some time getting good at sales, learning about it, and putting a good sales process in place, and you can easily start closing clients as well. Combination of those 3 things, because remember, I had no testimonials, no proof, nothing. Brand new business and no experience myself in actually providing this service. It didn't stop me from closing $5,000 worth of clients in the first 30 days. So if you're starting an agency, here's what I learned. Don't focus on fancy funnels or logos or your website. No one cares, right? No one cares about any of that stuff. Here's the main things you want to do. Pick an outreach form, right? A method of outreach. Is it going to be cold calls? Is it going to be LinkedIn? What is it going to be for you in your specific niche? And just hit crazy amounts of volume. I can't stress this enough. Volume negates luck every single time. And remember, it's competitive. I'm calling those leads as well. I don't anymore. I run ads, but I would have been calling those leads at the time. There's hundreds of other or thousands of other agencies out there that might be calling your leads. It's competitive. So make sure you're doing more than just 50 calls a day. You know, try and focus on a crazy amount of volume as well. And I promise you, even if you're bad, even if you have no experience or sales skills, you'll still make it work, because the amount of volume that you do substitutes your quote unquote talent. And the next thing I wanted you to focus on, and my advice on what I learned, is get good at building those skills quickly. Start learning those skills, sales, marketing, on building those sales skills and communication skills more than anything. If you can learn how to communicate effectively and speak effectively and sell and persuade clients to purchase your product over somebody else's, you are inevitably going to get further than your competition. Communication is the biggest thing, right? And before this, I did not know how to communicate. I always was the shy, reserved type. Now, fast forward 2 years later of doing this and having taken thousands of sales calls, I'll sell to anyone and everyone without being a nervous wreck doing it. So it changed my mindset a lot basically as well. My mindset changed so much after that first sale. And that's all you guys need, right? One sale, and your conviction will go through the roof. It'll go absolutely crazy. Because in my situation, this is how crazy it is. You're telling me that a stranger in a different continent in the US who I've never met paid me and put money into my bank account because they trusted me to provide good results for them. When I say it like that, it sounds crazy. And when you realize that, and when I realized that at the time, I was like, damn, I'm probably not as bad as I think I am. And this isn't as difficult as I thought it would be. Listen, it's more difficult than the gurus make it out. I'm just going to tell you straight up, but it's not as difficult as I thought it was going to be in my head. Remember, I planned out 6 months of making no money. I was like, I'm probably not going to make any cash from this for a while. I'm just going to try it anyway and get good at it as fast as I can and try and make some money. But the one thing that I learned was, if you can sell to one person, you can sell to 10. And if you can sell to 10, you can do it for 100. And so all you need is one sale. That's it. So the snowball effect just starts to take over at that point. But that was basically my experience in a nutshell. My first month, that's all it was. Keep it simple. You don't, it wasn't fancy. I didn't have any sort of fancy marketing in place at that time. I didn't have any sort of serious sales skills. I already had a little bit of sales experience and I knew how to, but I just hadn't been so well versed in high ticket sales online. And so for anyone struggling, anyone who's got questions about running an agency or running a marketing agency or getting into SMMA, just feel free to comment below with whatever questions you have, and I'll give you some guidance. Free of charge, by the way. Most people pay for this kind of information, right? I know I had to in the beginning when I started. But fast forward now, a couple of years later, I still run my agency. It's been a couple of years now of me doing it, and it didn't take me long to eventually hit those 10, 20K months within the business. If you guys want to see that, or if that's of interest, let me know. I'll break down how long it took me to get to 10K months and then further past that to 20K months with the business. And I'll break down step by step exactly how I got to those revenue goals. But apart from that, I hope this was of some sort of value. Again, leave those comments below. And don't forget to hit the subscribe button, show some support if you want to see some more stuff like this in the future. And I'll see you in the next one.